All right, good afternoon. My name is Tom Suter. I am the founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. And welcome to our Thursday after lunch IT webinar series. And we've got a fantastic topic for you today, AIOps. We just started a working group in this area. It's kind of all the rage. It's enabling great technology to be implemented very quickly, and we're really excited. We got a great panel for you today. I'd like to thank all the attendees. Special thanks to Cheryl Dorch, Carolyn Ford, and the rest of the Switch Data and Dynatrace teams. These folks have been great partners with ATARP. We've worked with Cheryl and Carolyn before, and they're supporting our working groups. They do a lot in this industry, and they were kind enough to help us out, on this important topic. So can I get all my panelists on? And while we're doing that, so we're going to go with each of the panelists. We're going to do a quick introduction. We're going to go let them talk for about 5 minutes about what they're doing. And then we're going to open it up to questions. We're going to maybe have some polls. It's going to be an exciting afternoon, and we're glad you could join us. So just real quick introductions. I got the Hollywood Squares thing going here. Let's start off with you, Jane Pinellas. It looks like you're working from home, but Jane is the Chief Test and Evaluation executive at the Artificial Intelligence Machine Learning the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, better known as the JAIC. How are you doing today, Jane?
Hi, everyone. And in fact, I'm not working from home. I'm working from my hotel room over at Carnegie Mellon University today. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. Again, I'm Jane Pinellas. I'm the Chief of Test and Evaluation over at the JAIC, the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center. That means that I have kind of two jobs. One is to provide rigorous.
Hang on, Jane, I'm going to get to you one second. I just want to introduce everybody really quick.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I didn't tee that up very well. Oh well. Sorry about that. And I'll next go to. Sorry to get my act together here. Shenandoah Spears, Associate CIO of the Applications Division, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. How are you today, Shenandoah?
I'm doing great. Hope everybody's doing good. Shenandoah Spears, as you mentioned, and I've been with NASA for about 3 years. I run the applications within the OCI of NASA.
Great. And you got the NASA, you got the company shirt on. And where are you from today?
Today I'm working out of my house out of Huntsville, Alabama.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great. Next we have Nikunj C. Oza, a leader, Data Sciences Group, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, Ames Research Center. How are you doing today, Nikunj? You got the NASA. I like it. That's a good thing when you have somebody from NASA. They're company men over here. How are you? I think we don't have your audio. That's why we kind of go through this little process here, just in case. We'll get you back.
Oh, okay. Sorry. How's this? Yeah, guys, fantastic. Just making that joke, right? We can send man to the moon or to Mars or wherever, but we can't get our act together with unmuting and stuff like that. But yeah, other than struggling with these collaboration platforms, I lead the data sciences group over at NASA Ames Research Center up in Northern California. It's about 35 miles south of San Francisco. Our group does machine learning and data mining R&D for applications to the full range of NASA problems, not only just the space exploration and space science, but also earth science and aeronautics.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Well, no problem. We're going to hear more from you in a second. And we actually have somebody in their office today. It's amazing. It's like almost the first time. We have with us Sean Applegate, Chief Technology Officer of Switch Data Corporation. There's Sean. What do you have to say for yourself, my friend?
Hey, good afternoon, Tom. Yeah, happy to be here. We're getting back in the office, getting to work together as teams. So hopefully today we get to talk a lot about working together between a line of business and our AI teams and delivering amazing results for our customers within the federal government and the citizens around America.
Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, we have with us Willie Hicks. And Willie is the Federal Chief Technology Officer at Dynatrace. Hi, Willie.
Hi, how's it going today, Tom, and everyone on the panels? Good to see you all again. And yeah, as you mentioned, I'm Federal CTO over here at Dynatrace. I'm working out of my home today over in Maryland, in the Gaithersburg area. So yeah, working at home, so hopefully you won't hear any kids in the background screaming. And but it is a pleasure. And Shenandoah, you said you were from Huntsville. I'm originally from Alabama myself, outside of Birmingham, so kind of miss home sometimes.
Yeah, we got quite the panel. We got the areas of the country all covered. And Jane, where actually are you? Before I get into your talk here, where are you actually? I didn't catch where you were today.
We're visiting Carnegie Mellon University today, exploring some collaboration. So we're in Pittsburgh.
That is my hometown. So go Steelers. We have the draft tonight. I don't know if you're a football fan, but I was born and raised in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, which is right by Carnegie Mellon. So fantastic. And I'd love to hear, this is a good segue. My last meeting in a government building was the Jake. It was the Friday before we closed everything down. So love to hear about what you're doing over there. And I know our audience can't wait.
So what I do over there is I head up our test and evaluation division. That means we have two roles to play. One is for the JAKE, where we provide rigorous, objective, and credible test and evaluation of the JAKE's AI-enabled systems. And this can be any piece of it or everything, right? Starting from collecting mission requirements, things like robustness and resilience of our systems, things like compliance with the responsible AI principles, to more technical things like evaluating the algorithms for actually how well they perform, evaluating human system integration or just system integration when it comes to multiple systems, and through operational test. So that's job number one. Job number two is facilitate test and evaluation for the rest of the department. So one of the issues within the department is, of course, is being prepared when it comes to testing these systems, right, and building the assurance cases over time for our systems. And so it's our job to kind of share any knowledge and methods and tools and data that we get with the rest of the department as well. Over.
Fantastic. And now we're going to go kind of NASA for a little. We got a NASA theme here. Maybe we'll start off with you, Shenandoah. Love to hear about the work you're doing down there in Huntsville.
Yeah, I think NASA is actually going through a digital transformation right now where we are looking at AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning and bringing that into the organization. And so when you think about AIOps, right, you think about what it can do for the organization. One of the platforms that we've implemented is a DevOps pipeline. We have a DevOps pipeline using Kubernetes. And so having something like AIOps will help us better manage and make sense of the data, provide insight using real-time and historical machine learning analysis, right? And be able to predict what could potentially happen and help decrease maybe some of the events or maybe even eliminate the events altogether. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. Our DevOps pipeline is maturing, and we need the ability to have insight into that. And super excited about other artificial intelligence and machine learning that we're bringing into the organization. One of the other things we're also doing is robotics process automation, RPA, right? To help automate the business processes, thereby allowing us to free up resources and free up people to focus more on value rather than a mundane business process, right? So those are some of the things that we're working on and doing.
It's fantastic. And just it was last fall. I forgot to mention we actually worked with you on that digital transformation event. You can definitely see it's from the top down and from the bottom up that everybody's kind of seems like they're on board inside of NASA. So that was great to see. And this is a big part of that, right? Nikunj, would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, thanks so much. So, as I am, in addition to the data sciences group lead, I'm also have a role within the digital transformation effort at NASA that Shenandoah mentioned. I'm a co-lead of the AI/ML sub-team, which is one of the 6 sub-teams that we have. For most of what I do, is more kind of the bottom up, what you alluded to. And so, certainly there's this desire to set up something like an AIOps and for other digital tools as well, have as much of a common infrastructure as we can to where, all employees and projects can at least start with that base and do as much as possible without everyone having to rediscover tools and methods for themselves. But to some extent, some customization is going to be needed. And that's why there's a little bit of pushback, because we do have quite a variety among the different NASA mission areas, like the Earth science, aeronautics, space science, and the human space exploration. So that means, wide variety of different data types, quantities, time sensitivities, the variety of types of analytics that they are already used to doing, which they need to continue, but from which they may want to then add appropriate, say, ML methods. But luckily, there's some universal aspects as well. So, I mean, in addition to this, the AIOps, kind of what you might call on the desktop, which is mostly what we've been doing in the group, mostly machine learning on the desktop, so to speak. We're trying to add machine learning to our various measurement platforms themselves. So whether it's satellite-based instruments, the remote sensing, airborne instruments, whatever they may be, push as much analytics out there to do what is appropriate there, and then do on the ground only what is appropriate there. So certainly those are some big challenges. We do also have a little bit of challenge around misinformation around AI. So I have unfortunately had people say that they didn't come to our group to work on machine learning because they thought we needed a large amount of data in order to use ML. They still see ML as only deep learning, which is very data inefficient, but there are many much more efficient methods. And then you get the occasional person who will think that, AI and the people like us who are implementing it are trying to go and steal their jobs or such, and don't realize that it really is, we really do view it as a partnership.
Yeah, I don't think NASA's going to run out of things to do. I don't care how much data they can ingest and process. There's plenty of, we got to catch the next killer asteroid to get to Mars. We've got a lot going on there at NASA. Fantastic. And Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I just to interject with that, I would say there's an unbelievable amount of data that NASA has. I mean, it is mind-boggling. And the ability to use AI and ML is going to be crucial, right? As they say, data is the key.
Yeah, I mean, you have an enormous amount of data. You're going to need the people to work with the AI to figure this out and make sense of it. I mean, I see so many things coming out of NASA on like a weekly basis. You guys really have a lot there. So I don't think we have to worry about the mission is never really going to shrink. So interesting. Sean, you guys at Swish, you're kind of like a hybrid. You're kind of working with the technology, but you're also implementing it across government. What do you see in this space as you make your travels?
Yeah, I would say we see a broad range of maturity levels. We have departments within large organizations that are very focused on AI and machine learning and have learned how to transform the data and do very interesting things with it. And then we have other departments, often our own IT departments, that are very challenged with understanding how do we even collect the data first? And once I get it, what do I do with it? So I think a lot of this has to do with self-reflecting within your mission, within your team or your department or individual role, and really contextualize your responsibilities and how you can use AI in your unique use case. Often what we find in the technology side are there are very specific use cases, very highly tuned, that are very effective for individual roles. Good example with some of our partners are things that are deterministic causation engines that help us understand a full stack of how an application, a network, the infrastructure around it, the cloud works. And when things don't work, what actions do we take to scope the problem, find an issue, and then ideally write a playbook or response that corrects it automatically if we've seen it before. Similar things with RPA, I would say we were seeing a lot more work around robotic process automation coming out of GSA's playbook and their Center of Excellence. And so that's a very repeatable framework that government can easily adopt. And there are frameworks around that move very quickly and not just get the organization rallied around it, but execute it from the bottom up and the top down. And also from an acquisitions perspective, we're starting to see some of that stuff really start popping out on a much more regular basis. So very excited about what's going on in the RPA space as well.
Yeah, interesting. And Willie, you've had the perspective of working for a product company and you see across government, but you also can kind of refer back to the private sector. I'm kind of curious about what are the differences, if any, between the private sector today and what the federal government's trying to do?
Yeah, so thank you, Tom. And first, let me just say this is really an honor to share kind of this virtual stage with so many distinguished panelists. And yeah, so I have had the privilege, being CTO here with Dynatrace, federal CTO, working with a lot of agencies, a lot of leaders across the federal space, but also, as you mentioned, I come from the private sector, so I spent many years in the private sector as well. And I do see a lot of commonalities between the two. And when I look at what we're doing at Dynatrace and what we're doing on the commercial side, and honestly, the same thing on what we're doing on the federal side, is we're helping our agency partners to really assure and ensure that their IT operations, their applications are performant and they can scale. And I think we've already talked about a lot of things. I know Shenandoah was mentioning around bringing, the complexity that comes when you start introducing not just the cloud, but containerization, Kubernetes, all of these other components, a lot of different pieces of infrastructure, microservices, et cetera. Everything's becoming larger. It's more complex. You're existing in on-premise, but in the cloud as well. So that is very common between the federal space and the commercial space. I would say in some respects, and in some areas, like I think of the DoD, it kind of even dwarfs what we see in the commercial space, just kind of the scale at which some of these operations work. So in NASA especially. But, so what we're going to bring to that is modern observability, kind of advanced automation, AI, and so forth to agencies. And I see that across the board.
Great, thank you. First question I have for you all is, what are some of the best practices that you've seen for the federal agencies, Department of Defense, civilian agencies that are using to implement AIOps? And I'll start off with you, Jane, on that question.
For us, I think the best practice, and this is not even necessarily limited, I think, to AIOps, is to not wait to start testing something until the end, right? And to keep testers and users actually engaged from the very beginning. Because we have found that it's really difficult otherwise to connect any kind of model metrics that you get early on in system development. It's really hard to connect them to operational outcomes, at least for now. And so if the user is engaged really early on, if your tester is engaged really early on, that's when you can sort of get at this agile style development process. And that's how you avoid big disasters at the end. And which is contrary to the way that the department historically has done testing, right? Where a test is a big event that occurs before deployment. So that's a big culture change that we're going through.
Yeah, the test happens at the end, then it doesn't pass, and then you've got like the contractor has to redesign the whole thing, and then who's paying? So this is a little better when you do it the right way from the beginning. Shenandoah, how about yourself? What have you seen?
Well, we are just beginning the journey for AIOps, but we've had a DevOps pipeline for some time, and we're working through agile software development and the way we do development. What I would say for best practices is don't try to boil the ocean all at once, right? So focus on where you think it can be successful and do an MVP, right? And implement in smaller areas and bring on individuals that are change agents that are wanting to help you change. So that would be my advice.
Great. How about you, Nikunj? You are entering this journey and you're kind of working from the bottom up. What are your suggestions?
I think really kind of adding to Jane and Shenandoah's points is that with regard to the end users, it's making them realize how much effort they will have to put in as well. This is not for us with our machine learning R&D. It's not that they can take the data and just throw it over the wall to us. and we will throw back over a final solution. The bit where the algorithm is run also is a very small part. There's the data is rarely in a form where you can really use it. We have to work with the users on getting noise and funny artifacts out of said data. And then the result of the algorithm is typically not in a form that an end user can use as well. Helping them actually interpret that, translate, in this case, a machine learning result into a domain relevant result is going to require a partnership, ongoing partnership as well.
Yep. How about you, Sean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the main thing is we need to understand what's the most important processes to even look in using AI for in the first place. So one of the things we do a lot at Swish is trying to understand from a systems thinking approach, where are the key constraints within an organization's mission or the objective within a team? And where do we want to make those very targeted investments to get the maximum mission velocity or the maximum return on investment? So we're making changes and pulling levers that have a very large impact on the organization's ability to deliver on whatever your objectives are. And that's going to be very different for, say, a team running a DevOps pipeline that has to balance running things in operation versus fixing things in code or making new features versus a line of business that might be the personnel shop of your S1 or G1 shop in the military that needs to worry about how do I develop my workforce? What are the skills they need to develop? Who are my employees that need the most assistance? Or how do I adjust for things like promotions and payroll changes? And so those are more of the lower level RPA functions like processing purchase orders and credit card processing or Affordable Care Act applications that can really have a massive impact on citizens, but is that the right investment for an organization to make? And what are the trade-offs if I spend time on back office things versus things that are very visible to the citizen? So that's really a tough decision that I think most organizations kind of skip over in most cases and get down on the tech. But when you step back as an organization, you really need to prioritize those investments and do that in a way that's aligned with strategic objectives and not just an individual department's needs.
That's great. I'm going to kind of ask everybody that question once I finish this one. What are some areas where you should are you concentrating on now, or where people should concentrate? But Willie, do you want to finish the thought on that?
Yeah. So when I think about best practices and when it comes to AI ops and AI and IT ops, I look at a few key things, and I think they've already been touched on. A lot of them already been touched on. Data quality is really important. So from our perspective, especially when we are monitoring and when you're looking at the operational efficiency and the effectiveness of your systems and making sure you're performant and they're always on, always available, you need good high fidelity sources of data that have a good sample rate. So, you're looking at maybe all transactions. You're not looking at like every 1,000 or every 10,000. The more data we have, the better, from our standpoint, the better decisions we can make. Automation is also key. I think as Shenandoah was mentioning, earlier with some of the efforts, it sounds like at NASA, like when you look at moving to environments like Kubernetes, where you have containers that are spinning up and down, when you've got, you're going from maybe a monolithic application to tens of thousands or hundreds, or, I'm sure in your case, maybe thousands of microservices. You need a method to automate the ingest of that data, to get the data, to make sure the sources are good, the sources are clean. And also multiple data sources. So, we're talking about observability from, the standpoint of telemetry coming from servers and containers, logs, traces, but also from my perspective, the end user, if I can trace all the way to the browser, to the mobile device, to the end point, then that gives me a complete data set. So I also want to comment earlier, I'm a big believer, I can't remember who said it, but starting small, because you need to, you don't want to jump in and kind of boil the ocean, as was said. You start off small, but have the system built so it can scale as you add more data, as you add more analysis. So that's kind of the best practices I would lay out.
Great. And Jane, curious, what kind of projects are rolling into you right now? Where you can kind of, the whole, Department of Defense I think a lot of them are using you right now because what you're doing is hard in the test evaluation. What trends are you seeing? What kind of use cases are coming through?
We're seeing quite a few, frankly, more than what we can realistically take on at the JAIC. So that hopefully that sets some expectations at least. But generally speaking, we have our mission areas, and so we tend to work within those. Probably, I'm getting a really bad echo for some reason. Probably the most in demand one is our joint warfighting mission area, right? Because that's very central to everything the department does. But we've also had a lot of luck in joint logistics. Those tend to be AI problems that are kind of well scoped. I would say, although data readiness is always an issue, as somebody had previously mentioned, there's a lot of interesting problems in joint information warfare. A lot of really good AI appropriate problems in warfighter health that we're seeing, and also in business process automation, as others have mentioned, right? When we talk about AI in the DoD, we don't need to be stuck on weapon systems necessarily. There's plenty of other really interesting automation, AI, and autonomy that we can do.
In just a little background, Dr. Pinellas was referring to, they have 6 areas of concentration. We should actually send that out. But it sounds like they're pretty much all the areas are kind of hitting you up. So you're all over the board. It's not like
yeah, we're definitely buzzing, and it really highlights the need for us to not just work on these individual projects, but really create the enabling systems, right? That enable then others to work through their old products instead of the JAIC taking it on, because there's no way that we can properly do that for everyone who needs it.
Right. Maybe they need to clone some of those capabilities in their own departments.
Exactly.
Sounds like you're a victim of your own success over there. So.
That's very generous. I don't know if I would quite put it that way. I think there's just a lot of need for it.
Yeah.
Right. And so we at the JAIC learn the hard way and then try to share our lessons learned with the rest of the department.
That's fantastic. How about you, Shenandoah?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a lot of influx of data, right? There, like I said earlier, there's a tremendous amount of data, and how to digest that data and make business decisions and mission decisions on that data. So we're seeing a lot of that. I think we're also seeing a lot of the ability to automate business processes. So part of my area, I'm responsible for the business systems within NASA, and being able to automate the financial system, the procurement system, those kind of things is a big investment that we put into RPA. And we're working with the NSSC, which is NASA's Shared Services Center, to help with implementing that RPA. So I think those are the 2 big areas, automation and data. Yeah.
Right. And how about you, Willie? And I'm going to get back to you at the end, Sean, since you kind of came up with a question.
So maybe, I was just thinking about this, maybe an example would help kind of illustrate some of the things that we're seeing. So, recently I was working with an agency, I should say that the team was working with an agency that saw and really unbelievable acceleration in several key of their modernization efforts. And of course, it was due to the pandemic. And some of these activities that they saw acceleration in around modernization, they were booked 2 and 3 years out. And due to COVID, they had to really accelerate and complete these within a week. So, that was a big project that that we had to really address. And there's a lot of interesting points to discuss there. But what is most relevant kind of to what you asked on the topic today is what we saw was automation and AI analysis of the performance of these systems was mission critical for the agency, because the scale of their infrastructure increased dramatically and just really quickly. So the teams that were tasked to bring these systems online, they needed to focus really on the task at hand and not tracking down faults in the system and looking for anomalies and things like that. So basically, what I saw was AI became kind of a force multiplier for these teams, and it let them kind of automate complex analysis and troubleshooting, like troubleshooting a slow connection to isolate, where a fault was in the system, or a piece of code that was written for this move and it was crashing. So what we saw here, and what I see with a lot of agencies, is that they're able to do this using AI, using AIOps and kind of taking human intervention out. But one thing I wanted to mention, I think someone said it earlier, we're not taking away jobs. We're not looking at taking away people's roles. This is really, like I said, just a force multiplier. And so this was just one agency, but I see this across the board. And basically what we're seeing is that, we can automate these manual tasks to deliver meaningful efficiency.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I've known during pandemic, can we deliver these services faster? The work isn't going anywhere.
Yep.
Can you do it faster? Can we get, achieve better results? I don't think that the human, I'm going to lay off people because of AI. I don't.
If anything, we're allowing you to do the things that you should be doing and not trying to troubleshoot, a connection issue, which, and I've seen it before. Somebody unplugged the wrong thing and we're running around trying to find it for, spending hours, and it literally came down to one switchboard.
Yeah. I'm an old telecom guy. I know about all that problems there. And Sean, you want to put a bow tie on this?
Yeah, I would say from an operational perspective, there are lots of communities of interest that are building great use cases, very targeted situations. The GSA community of interest is a great place to start because they've got a document that lists out all the different use cases captured by federal government agencies from an RPA perspective, for example, and it's hundreds. And so just reach out to the community is a great place to get started, because you're going to find there's use cases in every different department you work with that are known use cases. Also, if you have IT systems that are adopting AIOps, teach your users how to consume that. A really simple example would be if you have maybe more seasoned executives in your staff that have to do expenses when they travel a lot when COVID lifts. You might want to use the AIOps function of taking a picture of your receipt with your camera and having your AIOps driven expense system automatically process it for them, so they don't have to do it, or their assistant doesn't have to do it. So those are really simple use cases. Probably the most common on the RPA side that reduces time is really going to focus on taking things out of a PDF or another system and snapping it into a different system you have to input the data into. Very low level, easy use case, but massive time savings when you can take that and multiply that across 1,000 or 10,000 employees that are doing that same process every day. Yeah. Massive return on investment. And then again, from the IT operations perspective, this is the other one I love, because if you can make your enterprise applications run much faster, more efficiently, and fix the outages 10, 20, or 100 times faster, that again gives you massive return on investment, because you don't have that impact on, say, 50,000 users of that application. So great use cases for the government where you can get large productivity gains with some very targeted use cases.
Fantastic. Let's go to some polls. As part of the CP credit process, we do polls. You know what? They're some of the best things we've ever done. We've actually learned a lot in these polls. We actually get publicized on these polls. So I kind of bought in. It ended up being a great idea. Let's go to the first one, Alyssa. On a scale of 1 to 5, how familiar are you with AIOps and what AIOps is, the importance to the federal government? Don't think we got our grammar exactly right there, but that's okay. Well, I think everybody gets it. So let's see. Can we close that one, Alyssa? I think we gave everybody enough time. Okay, we're kind of more closer to the beginning than the end, I think, right? So we got some work there. It's kind of a relatively new term. Is anybody surprised by that, or any? Not really. Sometimes the polls kind of justify what we think. How about we go to the next one is more interesting. We go to the next one, Alyssa. How far along is your agency with implementing AIOps? Are already finished implementing? Have we begun implementing? I'm really interested to see this one. No plans to implement? Not sure. All right. I submitted mine. Can we go ahead and see what it is? We plan. Okay, here's where we are, right? Closer to the beginning, but that's good. That's okay. I think it is. Any comments from anybody? Not surprising, I guess. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, Tom, I'll say this is a journey, and it's not a tool. There's tools that use AI. You can't just go buy an AI. And even if you had the tool, if there was one, your team really has to learn how to use it and how to apply it. It's just a lot of what Jane's mentioning, but it's more of a journey, and you're going to need a center of excellence to lean on, and you have to collaboratively take ownership within individual departments and teams to learn about it and then figure out how do I apply it within my organization. And so that's a journey that you take together as a whole department or a whole agency, really.
Right.
Actually, Tom, this is Nick Coons. I'm actually curious about kind of maybe along the lines of what Sean mentioned, that to what extent is AIOps actually being implemented kind of at the agency level, or is it, say, some chunk that has decided that they need to set up AIOps, or maybe worse would be if there are multiple chunks that are deciding to kind of do it on their own and they are not really aware of each other's efforts?
I mean, I can, from my perspective, and Sean, I'd be curious to hear your take on it too. I would say it's more of the latter, where I'm seeing, I'm not seeing many agencies that it's becoming like, this is an agency mandate. We're going to, we're all going to embrace AI and AIOps, but it is, it's more needs-based. I see it like department by department. There might be a very specific need where, for example, I had one customer who they had they were running basically 3 shifts, and their need was they hired someone just to sit there and watch for some processes that if a process failed, like 2 o'clock in the morning, because these systems had to always be up and running, they would restart the process. So they needed to automate that so they could actually not have to worry about a 3rd shift. I mean, it was very narrow and targeted, but I think over time, we're going to see, in my opinion, I think that you're going to see more of a move where agencies start to embrace it more as a whole. That's my opinion, at least.
Great.
Yeah, we see it every which way you can imagine. And a lot of it depends on the size of the organization and whether they have a strategic department assigned to it. So in DoD, for example, massive organization. I was a Marine back in the day. And so having the JIG's a great place to go back and say, hey, experts, how do I work with you guys? And what can I do for my job or my mission? And that mission might be at a very small unit out at the edge that's very nimble and has a high-speed operation, but not a lot of people. Or it could be a massive organization like Defense Acquisitions. And how do I do acquisitions and analyze acquisitions across multi-billion-dollar budgets and thousands of projects? So I think the biggest thing is you probably need to have a great center of excellence that people can reach back to for expertise, but don't slow down that high velocity edge, that edge workforce that's really innovative, that understands their use case, their actual steps and processes, but arm them with little bit things like lunch and learns and brown bags and open source scripts you can use that they don't have to go buy new things for. Or if you procure fabrics for things like robotic process automation at scale for bot management, enable them on how to do that and teach them so you can have citizen developers so you can scale it up and you're not limited by a small central team being the bottleneck.
Right.
Tom,
go ahead.
Might I ask a question for you and maybe for the group? We've been talking a lot about AI and AIOps. I'm just curious, and you brought up a good point, Sean, about kind of, it could be at an agency level, but I'm curious, like this new report that came out, the National Security Commission, I believe, on AI, their assessment that just came out, which was pretty blunt in their assessment of where we are from an AI perspective. And I think one of the recommendations was that agencies, I think they may have been focused on the IC, but they were saying agencies need to automate everything. They need to get to a point where they're automating everything. I mean, do you see that kind of as that report and kind of that push as an impetus for moving agencies ahead? I didn't mean to derail it, but I was just curious.
No, I think that's part of it. We actually got a question how do you develop a community in these areas? And this kind of all comes together. ATARC, there's an OTA that was led a little bit ago called Tradewind that's just getting started. They have a group called IN3 there. ATARC is on that. We are still in the baby steps there, but what I kind of envision ATARC doing is coming up with working groups specific to those 6 mission areas. And I think that's, you kind of go from the bottom up to the top up. You get these folks talking about these different technologies, and you kind of bubble it up. I don't know if it's going to make Jane's job any easier. We may have to work on getting each of these, Air Force, Army, and Navy to have some of their own areas where they can do some of this stuff. But yeah, I think that's important. We're seeing a lot out of the administration. There's going to be a lot coming in about technology and using technology to enable the mission. So, and back to the Jake's mission, we were competing against other nations' states, shall we say, and we need to move the ball along if we're in the Department of Defense. But we need to reach our citizens better. We need to deliver services better. So this technology thing, I think COVID, and I'll get off my soapbox. COVID, congressmen, congresswomen, they heard from their constituents, I need better services. So all of a sudden they're interested in IT. Believe me, I've got a lot of information about that. So I think we're seeing a movement. So I don't know what the question is anymore.
No, that was.
So how about this? The next question, and I think, is what are the barriers to AI and AIOps and adoption? Maybe we can start off with that. And if I can go to my government colleagues, maybe start off with you, Jane. What do you see as some of the barriers? Is it infrastructure? Is it culture? I'm interested to see. You see a lot.
It's all of the above. I think data readiness is by far the biggest barrier, right? Yeah. I can't tell you how many great projects get proposed at the Jake, and we just don't have the data, right? Whether it be data to train, data to test, there are always some kind of issues. There's issues with label quality, and data quality and data representativeness, et cetera. There are also infrastructure issues, of course, and I think that perhaps is one of the overarching problems, I would say, is that the parts of the pipeline that we're missing are the least exciting to some people, right? So it's exciting to develop the coolest model that turns a panda into a toaster. But it's considerably less exciting, right, to get label quality right, or considerably less exciting to figure out all of the infrastructure that we need. But the truth is that in order for us really to build the assurance cases, in order for us to really build trustworthy AI systems, we need to have that ecosystem in place, right? And we need to have all of the piping in place. And I think that's the barrier. And that probably is best summarized in the culture, maybe, and some in workforce and skills, and the competition that we have for AI talent probably as well. Over.
That was fantastic. Actually, I've seen lately, the good thing about being an advanced technology academics research center, I see some cool technology. I think that Silicon Valley is investing in labeling companies, because seems like it's a big problem. I've seen some cool ones. So we'll talk offline. How about you, Shenandoah?
Well, I think Jane touched on.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think she touched on almost everything, right? The culture and people's acceptance of what AI and ML can bring to the table. The ability to have the data and the data in available, right? So I think there's a lot of aspects, but also I think budgets, right? So the budgets for the federal government and ensuring that there's a budget that can be that is there to help implement that ecosystem and the infrastructure needed for these type of initiatives. So I had to say something, it would be budget.
Budget. That's a good one. It's realistic. How about you, Nikunj?
Yes, certainly, strong agreement with what's been said so far, but I mean, also different, people have their ways of doing things already. So there is this problem of needing to learn a new tool or a new set of tools, understanding how it really works, people sometimes have different conceptions of what AI can do for them. And so they maybe will see an example and then rude reality sets in that not only is it they have to learn some new tool, but then they may even have to implement other tools in order to make use of what AI is producing for them. I suppose you could argue that that's kind of related to culture as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I was going to actually break out culture, but I'm glad you're doing that. Anybody else want to comment on this? Sean?
Yeah, I'll say one thing, and I think they can hit it on the head. I think a lot of it's the appetite to learn new skills. And then probably the biggest thing missing at a government level is probably the ability to step users or the employees through learning that in bite-sized chunks. It's the old analogy of you can't eat an elephant in one bite. One shot, you got to take it away in small little bites. And that's often the intimidating piece we see with customers is they want to achieve this massive, grandiose goal, but then they start with, well, where do I start and what's the journey to get there? And so bite-sized chunks, small steps, that's where the center of excellence and building that up, or relying on innovative small businesses to guide you through that, or large businesses in many cases, is really important. But in most cases, we find if you're starting from scratch, back to Jane's point, understanding how to find the data, pull the data in, what type of data you need is a great first step. And we're finding a lot of innovative solutions that are lowering the bar, that are almost GUI driven for grabbing the data, transforming it, getting it in the right places. So the bar is continually getting lower and lower as far as the ability to start grabbing data, transforming, getting over without having to have these PhDs in programming. And so that's an innovative thing we've seen that's really unlocking the value for organizations. They don't have to go hire a bunch of specialists that are hard to find in industry, to be quite honest, and very expensive.
Great. And Willie?
Yes, and I think Jane also might have had her hand up there. All I was going to say, and I'll turn it over, is that I agree with 100% with everyone. I think Jane may have also mentioned this. I think one of the biggest problems we see, and one of our biggest challenges, I think, from a company standpoint, is reproducibility and explainability. And what I mean by that is when we take these data sets and we analyze them and give you an answer, it needs to be something that's easy to understand, easy to digest, but also that there can be some trust in it. And because a lot of times our product is about root cause analysis, analyzing all this data, here's the root cause of your problem. A lot of times people say that, oh, that's cool, it's almost like magic. I don't believe it. How do you justify that answer? And we do a lot of things with visualizations and kind of showing the data trees and the fault trees that we're analyzing. But that's, at least from my perspective, that's one of our bigger problems.
Great. And Jane, you're next. Sorry I missed you.
You didn't miss me. I just wanted to add something because I think Shenandoah made a really important point about budget and funds. And there's two types of money that we need. We need research dollars and we need infrastructure dollars. And I think it's really important to point out that we actually really do need both, because it's one thing to use, to pay for existing cloud structure, and kind of more typical infrastructure costs, but there's still a lot of methodology that we don't have developed to really produce these assurance cases that we'll need to use these systems. Right? There's a lot of science that's still missing when it comes to looking at robustness and resiliency of our systems and their trustworthiness and explainability, to Willie's point. So there are two flavors of money and we need both of them.
Great. I'm actually going to jump into the next question for you as well. Where's the right role for industry? Where they come in to support the government mission? What do you think should be predominantly government, and what's the right balance, or does it just change with every use case? What have you seen work?
Is that also to me?
Yeah, I'll just start off with you. I don't want to forget you.
Okay. I think so. We seek to partner with industry mostly whenever we can, right? There are some limitations to it. Particularly my area is a little bit limited in that I think kind of objective test and evaluation of these technologies that the government pays for is actually an inherently governmental responsibility. But even then, there are ways to partner with us because, again, the state of the art often doesn't reside in the government, especially for something this technologically progressive. I will say, though, that the government, we're producing potentially systems of such high consequence, right, that we are actually superseding what the industry can do in some cases. And again, taking us back to assurance, we have some bigger problems than the industry experiences. And so that's why I pointed out previously the need for research dollars, is because there are some problems where the industry does not have the state of the art that we need. It just doesn't exist yet. And where the department actually and related organizations, I'm sure, like NASA, have to lead the way when it comes to that kind of research. We're just not going to be able to get it from industry or academia like we're used to. So that's number one. And then number two, we've taken some steps, as you pointed out, to make it easier to partner with us, which I think is really important. We have the Tradewind OTAs you mentioned, which is really about our ML development pipeline and being able to very easily contract with us there. We also have the T&E bulk purchase agreement, which the proposal stage for which closed in May, and we're now analyzing. We've got a great number of responses to that that's going to enable us in test and evaluation to get access to kind of creme de la creme vendors for T&E when we need help. And then we also have a data readiness contract vehicle that's similar to that. It's also a VPA that's going to come out soon. So we in the government have not necessarily made it easy to partner with us, despite our desire and necessity to partner with our industry counterparts. But that's one of the things that Jake is hoping to change.
Yes, with OTA authority, like you said, some of the stuff doesn't exist. So we have to really work on it. And I mean, if you go back to World War II and post-World War II, the DoD led all the technology. So we still have to do that inside of the Department of Defense. Shenandoah, any thoughts on this topic? About where?
Yeah,
where
I mean, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for me, the government has a process that they've been using for quite some time in order to partner with industry, anywhere from SBA, small business administration, to large contracts. And it is a little bit, I think, unfortunate how the government is still operating while trying to meet the needs of the industry, right? As the industry is changing so rapidly and so fast, but yet our processes and the processes that we follow have been around for centuries. I think hopefully there's some initiative to look at how can we modify the way we partner with our industry and to meet the needs for what we're trying to accomplish. I do know that there are other parts of the organizations like OPM and OMB and all of those folks that are looking at that to say, how do we streamline the ability to bring in the industry. But I may retire before then.
Well, speaking of industry, we don't have to go too far. How about you, Sean? What do you see as the right balance? Where do you want to? I'd love to hear what you have to say about this topic. You've
Sure.
got a lot of experience, not just with AI.
Yeah, I think some areas that are easiest to use industry are going to be those well-defined, well-scoped problems that are known variables that have already been proven in industry. And those are going to be your typical back office use cases, right? Processing purchase orders and acquisition documentation. And, hopefully that helps acquisition faster and simpler. But it could be benefits related, travel related, budgeting, aligning with TBM and analyzing your TBM frameworks and spend. Is it normal? Is it out of whack? Are you not buying enough infrastructure based on your needs? And so there's a lot of areas that are well defined. Industry is going to be very good at it, and it's just a matter of how fast you want to scale and where do you make your target investments for the best use of the agency's money. And then there's going to be the R&D stuff. And I agree. I think the R&D stuff's a lot trickier in industry. You're going to have to be very selective in who you team with, what skills they bring to the table, and how's it going to help you in your missions specific use case, which in DoD is going to be very different than, for example, maybe at NASA or at somebody like the Small Business Administration or GSA. I will say the other thing is if you can share the code from a government perspective, giving back to industry. GSA has posted a number of bots out on their community of excellence, if the rest of the government had a way to post their own bots that are not sensitive but very useful for industry, it's a way to give back to society that has far-reaching ramifications that could be amazing for not just the U.S. government across departments, but back to the actual workforce within America and industry itself.
Sean, that's such a good idea. I might have to take it. I'm going to go to GSA and ask them about that. And I might forget you. I'll try to credit you. Hopefully I'll still remember.
Hey,
I like that
one big team, Tom, one big team.
Yeah, one big team. And Willie, you've been working in and out of government. How can we get the federal government really the adoption of this commercial technology? What have you seen be successful?
Well, and I'll just say from a partnership standpoint, I will say it's a two-way street. From a Dynatrace perspective, from my vantage point, one of the things that's always top of mind and that I'm constantly thinking about is how I can support the mission, how I can support the federal government, whatever that mission might be. But I will say conversely, when I have a lot of conversations with our data scientists, the AI algorithms that we use, I can tell you NASA has been a big support for us too, because a lot of the deterministic AI models that we use within our product, I think NASA pioneered some of that, some of the science that we're using. So we're definitely benefiting from an industry standpoint. I will say, we are always looking for, and how we like to partner is to work with agencies to find where missions where it makes sense. Like you might have, it might be, we can monitor, say, things like IoT devices. You might have NOAA with buoys out in the ocean, and I had a conversation years ago about this, where they want to monitor, a lot of IoT data that's coming in from different sources. It might be a mission with I'm always fascinated where you look at the Navy and how carrier fleets are becoming far more automated, far more sophisticated with using onboard, Kubernetes and all these massive clusters that are on these ships. They're like floating clouds. That's a lot of massive complexity where we want to partner with these agencies, because I think honestly, it feels like it's our mission to make sure that you're successful. And to do that, we can help take some of that load off with AI. We can help maintain some of these systems automatically, but it comes down to trust and reliability.
Right. Well, this has been the fastest hour. I would have gone on for another hour here because it was such a great conversation. We have last thoughts. If we do this again next year, where do you think we'll be on AIOps? And I'll start off with you, Jane. Just 30 seconds each would be great.
I'm trying to think. I think at the JAKE, we're investing a lot into our joint common foundation. We're investing a lot in the JCF to hopefully be that pipeline that I've been talking about that is missing. I hope to also, from a personal perspective, what I bring to the JAKE, I think we're going to have a much more improved version of a test and evaluation factory built into the JCF. And so I hope that a year from now we'll be that much closer to producing trustworthy AI systems. Probably not all the way there, but hopefully considerably closer than we are today.
Great. How about you, Nikunj?
So certainly, I hope a year from now that AIOps is, more broadly adopted, further developed, more people know about it, but also kind of what we've been alluding to earlier, that really the non-AI aspects of our organization are also adjusted as needed. We have really properly implementing AI ops is difficult when we in government have a constipated process by which we set up agreements with non-government entities. We have so much of what's been talked about with data where it's not really ready for AI to use. And so you can start off with trying to implement an AI project, but it screeches to a halt because the other parts of your whole operation and system are not ready for it. So I'm really hoping that we spend some time focusing on how we can get the other aspects of our organizations and systems set up to make best use of AI. Thanks.
Great. And how about you, Shenandoah?
Yeah, I think for me, a year from now, I'd like to see that we have a better understanding, right? A better understanding of our data, a better understanding of how AI and ML can help unleash that data, as well as the AIOps in a way that helps free up resources. So those resources can really focus on the actual mission and the business itself. So for me, looking forward a year, 2 years from now, having that maturity and freeing up those resources.
Great. And how about Sean?
Yeah, I'll say as COVID lifts and we get back in the office, there should be a lot better collaboration around the use cases and the ideas that we're going to be able to come up with and then apply those. So if I look forward a year from now, I think we'll have a lot better understanding of AIOps, specifically RPA, and then team specific applications of AIOps. In our case, right, running IT systems with AIOps, I think it's going to grow rapidly. I think what we're going to start seeing is getting data in and understanding data and test data and figure out where the data is at. Again, gets easier over time. So I think that bar is going to lower. And that means applying things like virtual assistants or AIOps down the road is going to become easier. But a year goes by really fast. So, it'll be interesting to see where we're at.
And Willie, I think you get the last word.
All right.
Final last word.
All right. Well, I think the first thing I'll say, and Sean may have alluded to it here, I hope a year from now I'm sitting on a stage with you guys instead of behind this camera. But also seriously, I agree 100% with everything that everyone said. For me, my mission is to continue to talk to agencies and leaders to educate them on what AI really means, what AIOps really means, and what it means for your agencies, how it can. We're here to help you. We're here to help your agency, your mission, and your people to succeed. That's all I hope to do in the next year.
Well put. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thanks again to our partners with Switch Data and Dynatrace and our amazing panelists, Shenandoah, Willie, Nikunj, Jane, Sean. Everybody have a good weekend. And my weekend's already starting because I'm off tomorrow. I'm headed out of town. You guys all have to work tomorrow. But anyway, just to kind of continue the conversation, sometimes we're better lucky than good. We have the AI Data and Analytics Virtual Summit on Tuesday, May 4th from 1:30 to 3:30. So we're excited about that. And we will see you then. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thank you.
Peace,
Thank you.
Great job.
Have a good one.